I got a question for you guys. What do the majority of self-made millionaires or billionaires have in common? They read books. And moreover, or more so, they don't just read books, but they spend their money and their time investing in themselves, investing in their financial education, investing their time and mind into things that interest them, and sometimes even things that don't interest them that they see would be a benefit to themselves longer term. I personally don't enjoy reading all that much, but I have started to read over the past several years, not just physical books, but since I do a lot of driving with my current job, I do a lot of audiobooks and podcasts and things like that from people that I find influential and who I want to live my life similarly to, and take their values and their teachings and learn how I can implement that in my own life and my own businesses that I am currently in, whether it's my sales job that I currently have, but really more so in the real estate and in investment and things like that. I could provide a long list of influential books that have honestly changed my life. More so how I perceive life or things in life, and how I go about myself on a daily basis in order to achieve short-term and long-term goals ultimately. So today I wanted to share 3 books with you guys. I will put links to these books in the description below, so if you wanted to scroll down and check them out, feel free to click the links and they'll bring you to each of those books online if you want to see about purchasing or renting those books, whether it be physical or Kindle or again audiobook as well. But these are 3 of many of the books I've read over the past several years, but these 3 really stick out and really change the way that I think. They were kind of disruptive to me. They challenged a lot of things that I had thought to be previously true or maybe important to me. And these 3 books in particularly kind of shook my world up. So I definitely wanted to share a brief overview of each of those with you here today. And hopefully you guys, if you haven't already read them, you'd be willing to dive in and check them out. And the last thing I wanted to mention is if you have any of your favorite books that were super influential in your life and you wanted to share below, it doesn't have to be about personal finance or investment or real estate or anything like that. Please list them in the comments below. I'm always eager to branch out and learn something new and hear what you guys have to suggest. If you do enjoy this video, please hit the like button. And if you want to see similar content, I post about once a week, maybe more. Please do subscribe below. It means a lot to me, guys. I appreciate those who are already subscribed to my channel. So book number 1, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Most of you have probably heard of this book if you haven't read it already. It's a pretty quick read. Robert Kiyosaki is a self-made millionaire and a very influential mind. His viewpoints are very disruptive to the common talk that you hear, whether it be on the media or from traditional financial advisors or from financial blogs or other financial books. But the premise of the book is this. Robert grew up with his in a normal family setting, but he grew up with his poor dad, which is his biological father, and then he had a rich dad who was his best friend's dad. And he goes over why he lays the term one is poor and the other is rich. But essentially, his poor dad was a very highly educated man. He had a great job, but at the end of the day, he was poor. He didn't know about money, and he didn't know about personal finance and how to allocate his money throughout his life to kind of set up a future where it would essentially reach financial freedom, where you could take the burdens off your daily expenses from life and be able to live with cash flow coming from whether it be businesses or real estates or things like that. So his rich dad taught him to invest in himself and to avoid the typical mantra of go to school, get a safe, secure job, and play it safe. And invest in things like a 401k and what you are typically told as the typical things you should be doing to live your life right along the way. So his rich dad really taught him about money. Most people work so hard in life to get a promotion, to make more money as an employee, only to convince themselves to buy a bigger house, maybe a nicer car, and things like that. Spend money on things that don't necessarily matter or help us achieve financial freedom. We're taught all of our lives to avoid risk. And he talks about a lot in all of his books, but and it's bad to fail, right? To avoid risk, and it's bad to fail. It's pretty much embedded in our education system, both K-12 and higher education system as well. But as Rich Dad really talks about, investing not just your money, but your time into your own mind and learn. So you need to try things and fail fast, learn from your mistakes. And that's really the only way to manage risk instead of completely avoiding it. And I think that really kind of changed the way I think about risk and investment and how I spend my time or money. And then lastly, it really teaches you about assets and liabilities. And the general premise of Rich Dad Poor Dad is to invest your money in things that will ultimately pay you benefit or dividends down the road. So not just your mind and things like that, but also things like real estate that will pay you cash flow down the road, and you can kind of slowly build that over time to where you can achieve financial freedom probably at a younger age than you ever dreamed of, and so forth. So it's a great book to start with, especially if you're interested in real estate but just don't know where to start. Robert Kiyosaki is a very smart person, and he's done a lot in the realm of financial education for normal people like you and me. Book number 2, Cant Hurt Me by David Goggins. David Goggins, for those of you who are not familiar, he is honestly quite a crazy personality, but super entertaining. You can look him up on Instagram. He's written this book. He co-wrote another book, but this book, Cant Hurt Me, is really just about his life's journey. And if you're not familiar with him, just a brief intro about David Goggins. He was about 300 pounds, way overweight, kind of living a monotonous life, a monotonous job, things like that. And he had this crazy ambition of becoming a Navy SEAL, and he needed to lose, I forget what it was, like 120 pounds in 3 months in order to even basically meet the basic qualifications to go to the Naval Academy or go, get into SEAL training. So I'll leave how that all pans out in the book, but he talks about joining the Navy SEALs, things that taught him, and really how humans typically only reach, in his words, about 40% of their potential. And you guys can probably all relate, more on a physical aspect. If you're working out, or going for a run, when things start to get tough or hard, that voice in your mind starts creeping in and telling you to stop. You can't do it. Your body's hurting. You'll feel better if you quit now. And we've all been there. So he really talks about callousing your mind. He talks about how it makes you tougher over time and breaking through those barriers. And this is someone who has lived an extremely rough childhood. So coming from him, I think it's really important to live life without bounds and just to grab life by the balls, essentially. So he talks a lot about goal setting and taking responsibility for yourself first and foremost in order to achieve your goals. He's big on talking about how everything in life is so sugar-coated, whether it's at work, in school, social media. He says it's basically a bunch of load of crap, and you have to look at life for how it actually is. And again, callous your mind, not just to things that bring you individual pain, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, but outside factors as well, and learn to block those out and power through to achieve your goals. But the general premise of the book is life is hard, learn how to deal with it. And he talks about, various ways or tactics in order to achieve, small goals and long-term goals and things like that. But just learning about what he's done in his life is amazing. And I would highly recommend this book to anyone. It's an enjoyable read. If you don't want to read the physical book, the audiobook is great. I actually did the audiobook because he co-narrates it and kind of does like a podcast in between each chapter with the narrator for the book. So definitely would recommend it. The last one I'm going to talk about is my favorite book of all time as of right now, and it's definitely been the most influential on me personally, and really pushed me to get into real estate with my wife and get into rental properties and things like that. So it is Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a book that came out many years after Rich Dad Poor Dad, but this book will completely shake up your perspective on life. and not just in your own personal finance, but in business, how the economy works, how the education system is structured. It will completely flip it upside down and put it on its head. He talks a lot about how we're trained from a young age, especially throughout education. Our education system is, get good grades, don't fail, go to college and get a good expensive college degree, and get a safe, secure job that you may or may not like. Then once you get out of college and you're probably swimming in debt, buy a house, make sure you get a car, and build credit, and things like that. And debt, and all of a sudden we're piled up to our nose. And as soon as we get a taste of maybe a more rewarding job, or job that pays us a little more, not just tackling that debt, but we want to treat ourselves too and save for retirement. Invest in a 401k in hopes of becoming or retiring rich one day, right? And it kind of really shook me up when the majority of these factors, when you really start thinking about it, it's so true. And what's being pumped down your throat throughout it, K through 12, and definitely in higher education. And the majority of people never really learn about money in life and how money works. And it's not just the general learn how to balance a checkbook type of thing, but learn how basic economics works, supply and demand, and learn how, where you can probably make more money. And, ultimately the book talks about the cash flow quadrant, which is 4 sections, or one, a quadrant. And on the left side, you have the employees and the E quadrant, and then the S quadrant is self-employed or highly skilled labor, like a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And on that side of the quadrant, if you think about it, you're trading time for dollars, whether you're working an hourly job, or if you're a lawyer, or an employee, based on salary, you're still trading 40 hours a week or more in exchange for money, right? Now on the other side of the quadrant, we have the other 2 portions of it. We have business owners and then investors. And business owners, right, are typically building a foundation, and once they build that foundation and they can hire a team that can do it as good or better to them and expand from there, once they get to that point, they're no longer trading time for money, right? So then they have money to focus on things like investing and maybe starting another business. And then there's the investor portion of the quadrant, which is probably the holy grail, that and being a business owner, because at that point you're putting your money to work and you're investing in other people. So you're not trading time for money, you're trading your own dollars for most likely a very great return on your investment. It could be in other businesses, the stock market, real estate, whatever it may be. So again, going back on what we talked about before in the Rich Dad Poor Dad, kind of pouring over into this book, is when you're on the right side and you're no longer trading time for money, you're really spending time investing your money into your own skills and learning about, whether it be money or a new business you're looking to get into, or learning about new investment strategies and things like that. And the book goes down many rabbit holes, but one that really stuck out to me was to stop spending money on liabilities and start spending them on assets. And for me, in the last video I talked about how your house is probably your biggest liability and definitely not an asset, unless it's a rental property that's producing cash flow each month for you. So what I realize is that business owners and investors spend money on assets, things that pay them in the future, whether it's their mind again, or probably more so putting money in their own business or in other businesses, an investor, or in real estate. Spend money on assets, where employees and people trading time for money, self-employed or skilled employees, typically spend money on liabilities, right? So that's kind of the 2 different mindsets from each quadrant. And he talks about in the book and how you can jump, because most of us are over here as an employee, right? How can you jump from one side of the quadrant to the other? Because it's definitely possible, or to kind of coexist in these different parts of the quadrant. But super interesting book, and definitely will shake you up and again flip the typical nonsense that we hear growing up upside down on its head, and will definitely change the way you think, and not just you view money, but view your own life. And it's really kind of changed the way my wife and I are looking at how we want to strategize and build our life together. So I highly encourage you guys to read this book. If you're new to these type of reads, I would recommend reading Rich Dad Poor Dad first, and then diving into Cash Flow Quadrant, among other books. But definitely read the books by David Goggins. Again, I enjoyed the audiobook a lot. and that one you guys will fly through. It is pretty wild, and the man has no filter, and there's plenty of great stories in there. And then after you're done with that, definitely follow him on Instagram and other social media. His message is great, and he's a high energy, enthusiastic person, and super fun to follow. So again, thank you guys for watching. Please hit the like button below, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.